Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachdanamsalive.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our fourth episode of season 18, a very special guest and author of You Can Be Happy Again, Bouncing Back After Infidelity, Betrayal, and Loss, Miss Delia Gould. And just like every of my past episodes, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Delia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so excited and happy to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Delia Gould, as you mentioned before, and I wrote the book, You Can Be Happy Again, Bouncing Back After Infidelity, Betrayal, and Loss. It is available on Amazon. But in that book, I talk about my experience when my husband had an affair with my best friend. We were married for over 10 years, and he was also a leader in the church. And we were blessed with our own home, our own business, vehicles, and two wonderful children. We even had a date night, which was every Tuesdays. We would go out together, whether to the beach, to a restaurant, whether to the park, or just go for a walk or drive together. Life was good until I noticed a change in the relationship dynamics between my husband and my best friend. They began to get very close. And the first thing I noticed was a phone bill for my husband that had a lot of calls to my best friend. The last call and the first call every day was to that number, plus how many calls during the day. And not even that. There was even a number of texts as well, like 15 or more texts during the day. And when I saw that, it seemed a bit, strange and odd to me. Why would my husband have to be contacting my best friend so often? There was even a call at 1 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
But when I questioned them about it, they just said, we're friends. We're just friends. Nothing is happening. And that began a journey with the very dark, as I always tell people, it was one of the darkest experience in my life.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much to be here, Delia. I mean, I know how difficult it is to be able to go into the past and remember all those darkest moments that you have to experience. And I know that betrayal is definitely something that affects us in a very, very deep level, both emotionally, spiritually, physically, and other forms. And I know that the challenge, especially that you have built something incredible with your significant other. And then just in a moment notice, if you didn't pay attention to all the signs of what happened, of him being closer to your best friend. And now if you could go back for a second here, Delia, a lot of people, what I've seen in my practice, they come to me because yes, they've been dealing with betrayal as well. But for you, when you notice that your husband, or now your ex, I guess, right? Okay. Your ex was like serving the community as being a church member and all. But do you feel that he was also friendly with everyone else at the church? So it was very hard to decipher if it was one person in particular versus just the whole community?
Well, he was very friendly. He was a very friendly person, but there were a number of things that I noticed, right, between his relationship and my best friend relationship. And I do cover them in chapter 4 of my book, which is entitled Facing Betrayal, Facing Infidelity. And I there were a number of signs that I saw. I must say, he eventually confessed to the affair, but it took over 3 years for him to reach to that point. So during that 3 years, there were a number of signs that I saw. All of a sudden, I went from being the best wife to the worst wife. And not only that, he would defend my best friend. Is like she could do nothing wrong. He just everything he would just always defend her. And he started to say mine instead of ours. Before, he would be saying ours and so on. And there are a number of different signs that I saw that made me realize that they are really getting too close for comfort.
Yes, okay.
And I suffered in silence for over 3 years. And the reason I wrote this book is because I believe that there are other women out there who are also suffering in silence. They don't know what to do, how to deal with this situation. And this is why I decided to write this book, so I can help to reach these women and help them to know that you can be happy again.
But now, do you feel, Delia, that the focus on the gender, because now we see also a lot of women who betrays their husband.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
not gender specific that only to help women, because also men go through the same predicament.
Yeah.
So do you feel
Yeah,
that?
that's true. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because there is this guy, it was the opposite. He told me his best friend married to his ex-wife.
Okay.
And he has also bought my book. And yet there you are correct. There are men out there who are facing the same, betrayal. It's not just women who are facing this. But
Yes.
the book was written from a female standpoint, but there are information in there that can also benefit men. So there are men. I remember one of my friends, she said that when she got the book, her husband read it off in like 2 days. So men are also getting the book and also finding it interesting, and finding information in there that can benefit them. I must tell you, while I was going through this trauma, because it was quite traumatic,
Mhm.
as I said, it took him like over 3 years to confess. But I remember when he confessed, I went into a great depression. I call it a great depression.
29,
I
yes.
lost a lot of weight. Because I wasn't eating, I was hardly eating, hardly sleeping, and it took a toll on me. I became like figure one, very thin. And I remember after he confessed, one of the days I went to the office, because not only was she my best friend, she was also the secretary of our business.
Oh, geez.
Yes. So after he confessed, he confessed. When I got married, it's not like I intended to get divorced. I got married to like live all together, and till death do us part, as the vow says. So when he confessed, I did not immediately say, okay, you know what? I want a divorce. because he didn't only confess to the affair, he also confessed that the child that she was carrying was his.
Oh,
So, yeah, there was a lot going on there. And I told him, I said, I'm as your wife, I'm not comfortable with her being our secretary anymore. And, she must go. But he refused, which I think was a very reasonable request. He refused to let her go. And I told him it's either I alone or I'm not there at all, because I don't think that you should be sharing your husband
no.
with your spouse with anybody. And I was not for that. And as a result, he pulled away. But when I went to the office that day, as soon as I opened the door, her desk was right at the top of the stairs. So when I opened the door, I saw he was there, whispering something in her ears, very closely, whispering something in her ears. And you could imagine, feelings I felt, knowing everything, how I felt. I was really torn inside. And I went up the stairs and I asked him, I said, why do we have to go that close to her?
Okay.
And he was like, what do you want now? In this very aggressive
Yes.
tone of voice.
You in the defensive,
And
what happens?
I can tell you, in that moment, Dr. Dan, it's like the emotional scale, my emotional scale just went out the roof. And I remember I just stood there. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. And after a bit, I turned and I decided, you know what, let me just leave. I didn't say anything. I decided, let me just leave. And with every step that I took going down the stairs, I felt my body getting weaker and weaker. While going down the stairs, there was one of our pastors in the office, and he called my name. And the emotional state that I was in, I don't even think that I answered him. I just kept going down the stairs, getting weaker and weaker with every step. By the time I opened the door and went outside, I felt like I had no legs. I I couldn't feel my legs on my body. And I just fainted. But before I can fall on the concrete ground, the ground outside was concrete. Before I can fall on the concrete ground, the pastor grabbed me the same time. He was coming down behind me, unawares to me, because I'm in this kind of a state.
Mm.
And he was coming down, and then he saw what was happening, and he grabbed me and he held me up. So I didn't actually hit the ground. And I always thank God for sending that pastor, that person there, because sometimes I wonder what would have happened to me if I'd actually fall and hit my head, or, I could have really been really hurt.
That's so
But
true.
I must tell you that that was a turning point for me, because at that point I realized, I said to myself, Vida, you can't go on like this. If you continue like this, you're not going to make it. So I took my focus off of my husband and my best friend, and I put it on myself. I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to focus on my children, because I want to be there to look after them and to take care of them myself. I didn't want anybody else to have to do that. So I started to literally force myself to eat. I'm telling you, and try and get more sleep and take vitamins to try and build back myself. And then gradually I started to gain back the weight. And I I I tell you, just talking about it again, it just reminds me and puts me back in that place, where I was. It was a very, very dark place in my life. But that was a turning point for me, and I realized I need to look after myself.
Absolutely.
Forget about them and focus on myself and look after myself.
Exactly. And at the same time now, do you think that, um, first of all, are they together? Are they together right now, or
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, they're still together.
okay. But it isn't in a way that you guys been together for 10 years, but you said that you start seeing the signs. But going back, do you feel that they've been together a lot more than 3 years before you discovered that there was an affair?
That is possible. That is very possible. It's very possible. They never told me anything, they never told me when they started or anything. So that is indeed possible. I do not know how long they were together,
It's
but
not even worth it knowing because it's just,
no.
yeah, it's not going to change the
Mhm,
circumstances that occurred. Okay, so now what would you say to our listeners, to women or men, that are
mhm,
going through this kind of betrayal? What would you
mhm,
give them as an advice to be able to kind of learn to move forward and
mhm.
again be happy, even though you went through a very, very dark moment and very traumatic moment? What are the step by step that you recommend for people to start healing and not going back and always feel like they have to revenge the situation or revenge themselves for going through what they had to go through?
Well, that's a very good question, Dr. Dan. And one of the major things that I know that really helped me through this process or through this experience was forgiving them.
Mhm.
I remember every time I saw them together, it's like a ball of negative emotions all came together. Pain, the hurt, the suffering, the resentment, everything just boiled up together. And there was one time when I went to a supermarket and they were both there.
Okay.
And it was the first time I saw the baby. And while I was in the supermarket, I was able to contain myself. But as soon as I got into the car, the vehicle, and closed the door, all hell broke loose. I just started to bawl my eyes out. And doing that, my boys were sitting in the back looking at me, not sure what to do. And, I remember I cried all the way home. And when I got home, there was a friend there. As soon as I opened the vehicle door, I just started to vomit,
Wow.
literally threw up. And the lady came and when she saw the condition I was in, she tried to console me and so on. And I remember I told a friend of mine who had the same experience where her husband had cheated on her. I told her what I was experiencing whenever I saw them. And she said to me, she said, Delia, you need to forgive them. And trust me, I'm like, how am I supposed to forgive these people?
Yes.
You know, it seemed like an impossible task for me. I knew that I needed God's help. I could not do this alone in my own strength. So I prayed and asked God. I struggled sleepless nights, lying in my bed, wondering how am I going to forgive them. I prayed. And one day I woke up and I decided, you know what, I'm going to forgive them today. And I called them and I called her first and I said to her, I said, I'm not calling to cause any argument or confusion. I'm just calling because as a Christian, God expects us to forgive those that hurt us. And I'm just calling to offer you my forgiveness. And I even went further and I said to her, if there's anything that I did to you, to hurt you, please forgive me. And I remember she said these words, I forgive you. And after I called her, I called him. And I said basically the same thing. And you know what? From the time I offered them my forgiveness and I saw them the next time, there was no negative feelings. All the negative feelings had just disappeared. It was just like a miracle. All the negative feelings just was replaced by a calmness. So I know in forgiving them, I benefited the most. And that is one thing that we need to realize. When you see we forgive, we benefit the most. And you can find out more about the story in chapter 8 of my book, which is called Embracing Forgiveness. Chapter 8 of my book. And it's so important that we forgive. There's this famous quote by an unknown author that says, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Oh, wow.
But yes. But then since then, I thought about this one. Unforgiveness is like breathing in and never breathing out. You have to let the negative, emotions and all the negative things out. You have to let out the hatred, the pain. You have to just let it all out, let it all go. So forgiveness, definitely, you need to forgive.
But here's
Doesn't mean you have to go back to the person or back in the same relationship, but you need to forgive. And also, I mentioned one before, change your focus. Focus on the people who love and care for you. Take your focus off those who are hurting you and causing you pain, and focus on those who love and care for you. So also accept the things that you cannot change.
Yes.
I had to reach to the point where I realized, you know what? Well, my husband has left me.